Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wrist Cheese Radio podcast, your place for horological hot takes, taboo topics, and often unpopular watch opinions. My name is Schmidt, and joined with me, as always, is my good buddy. You guys know him. You love him, Mr. Brodinky. Bro, what's going on, my friend?
Schmidt, I'm having a lovely night because it's my last night of work for the week.
Hell yeah. I love that.
Yes. I was just checking out the Kansas City, Tennessee game. It's going into overtime, it appears. So just winding out with some football, hanging out at the end of the week. A couple neat little tidbits. Not only have we broken 60,000 downloads. Thank you again, everybody, for listening, putting up with us for so long.
Thank you, guys.
But also on 11/11/22, Brodinky will have been up and running for 5 years. Isn't that
No
some
way,
shit?
already?
Yeah, I mean, not memeing for 5 years, but the inception was 5 years on 11/11,
Wow.
2017.
That's amazing. That's so cool.
Pretty neat.
Congrats, bro. That's amazing.
Thank you.
It's a long time to do anything for that amount of time.
Yeah, especially something where you have to like rack your brain sometimes. It was easier in the beginning when there was like a million templates that nobody had ever seen. It gets harder.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing too. It's one thing to make one joke and it be funny and it goes viral, whatever, but to do it consistently, repeatedly, over and over and over for several years is a feat in and of itself.
Yeah, and you can reuse them. Don't get me wrong, but you really gotta, hit one out of the park. If you're gonna reuse the template, you better slam dunk that baby.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Because people have already seen it. It's like going back for an old joke on a new topic. It better have been a good joke.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah. Quick congrats to our Nomos winner.
Yes,
Mr. Mark Wilkes. Congratulations.
We finally picked him.
Yeah. $50 won a Nomos.
That's amazing.
Can't beat it.
I mean, that's kind of the dream, right? Like it's the thing.
It makes me feel bad for the people who kicked them like a lot of money. I'm extremely grateful and happy they did it, but I want to give them something somehow. It's just I don't have a watch for everybody.
I know, but you got to have some runner-ups, right?
I do. Glad you brought that up because I'll be getting to those shortly. We have some pretty neat runner-up prizes. If you remember last year, Woolbrook, the company, kicked in 10 straps. They decided they were going to come around on that again. So I'll have 10 really sweet 20 millimeter pink Tropic straps.
Oh, they're so nice.
They're really nice. And yeah, they're really, really nice. I wear one on my Zen a lot. I'll have 10 of those to give out. That's awesome. We also have some sweet hot pink Wrist Cheese Radio Yeti tumblers.
Limited editions.
So that's neat. A little swag there, and some other cool stuff, some stickers and things. I'll throw it in there as well. So keep an eye out for that. I'll be in touch shortly. And also, I mean, as long as we're on charity, I guess, shout out to all the Movember bros. Don't worry. Yes. I'm not asking you for any more money. All right. So let me pump the brakes there. I'm not asking you for any more money, but I know some people are doing it. Some people are into the Movember thing. So if you are, definitely support some of those people. I know our buddy, Peter, you probably know him as Mr. On Her Own Time, but yes. Kelly's husband, Peter, he's doing the 3,000 push-up challenge for Movember. Who else does it? Time for a Pint. Chris Mann over in the UK is big in Movember. He does some pretty impressive numbers, which is really great.
Yeah, and then there's RJ Kama, the
Super Doc. Yep, he does it every year. I think Red Bar Tampa's doing a group thing, which is pretty cool. So shout out to all you. I kick into a lot of these, so I'm not just blowing smoke up people's rears. I like to pay it forward as well for all the good fortune that I've had.
Absolutely.
But it's their time of year now, their time to do their thing. So shout out to them. And if you can, help them out too. So
100%.
For sure. And I guess lastly, the panel discussion I was on for Windup is up on the Windup site in case anybody wanted to check it out.
Yeah.
It was pretty fun. Nothing edgy or wild, but a lot of fun, a lot of a neat experience overall. And if you wanted to get a good look at my ugly mug in real time, good opportunity.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah. So a lot of new stuff dropped. An interesting week, especially given our last week's
It call us the
episode.
call us the Crystal Ball Boys.
It was an interesting week. Let's just leave it at that. I'll start with the jabs and work our way into the hooks, uppercuts, etc. So pretty cool. I think I don't know if you sent this to me or what, which one of us found this, but Volcane, right, a brand that we like. We talked about the
Yes.
cricket aplenty. They're bringing back a diver that they used to run. It's a reedition. They've labeled it a reedition, and they I think they've just been ahead on development, and they're like, well, I guess we'll just bring this thing to light because it's about to be out here. So it's a diver.
They're like
It's
we've made our project a little earlier than we thought. It's good.
That's basically
So
what the post says. It's on their Instagram, and it's a sweet little diver. It's 38 millimeters. It's got an ETA 2824. I think it comes in somewhere around like 1,500 Swiss francs, but it's a sweet little package, man. It's everything vintage diver that I love, that I always talk about, and all those old ones like the Ennicars and
yeah,
Aquastars. It's
straight out of the
so
70s. Straight out of the
it's
70s.
so awesome, and they didn't overdo it with the faux aging or anything. It looks really really good, and I really want to get my hands on it. And I happened to drop them a comment, and they might have asked me if I wanted to check it out. So that might be
Yes.
awesome.
That would be a very cool watch to come out. And it's a good name, man. The Nautique. I mean, it's so good.
Yes.
So
Yes.
good. So, but I'm just gonna say this, Volcane. I know you're listening. You have been, obviously, because you've been commenting on stuff that we've been posting.
Oh, true.
Um, but please, we know this is just a small dip in the pool. We're ready for the nautical cricket. I'm just gonna say that.
Dude, if
And
their
I
website
know it's coming. I know it's coming.
their website has a lot of sweet watches that aren't out yet on it already. That I'm like, where are these? Like, I'm trying to buy some of these,
Well,
man.
this is a brand that for so many years nobody has given any awareness to. And rightfully so. They've had some changes in leadership and management and ownership, and they've gone through a lot of tumultuous stuff, and they've had a little bit of an identity crisis. But this is the brand with such an incredible rich history that I'm glad that they're making a resurgence. And whoever is running them now, I think, is really paying attention to the back catalog, really focusing on manufacturing, and they want to do it correct. They want to do it right. And to me, I think that's what we want. That's what collectors want.
Yeah, so I'm very interested to get my hands on this. Kind of interesting. The photo is on a leather strap.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's going to be standard or if that was just a look they went with because it was a good photo or what, but I'll be interested to see what their offering is on that.
I mean, just swap it out for a tropic.
Yeah, of course.
It's gonna look sick on a tropic.
Yeah, Tropic, Dark NATO. Yeah, you can't go wrong with that. You'll be
No,
good.
it's a
But
cool diver for sure.
but if
I
yeah,
was
if you're
really impressed when I
if
saw
you're
him.
into the Baltic Aquascav look, like this is also your watch.
Yeah, and it's also like that new Benris that came out.
Yes, the
Was
Sea
it the
Lord.
Sea Lord?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's got that kind of like 1970s like blocky hands. It's a good look. Both of those watches are great looks. So it's good to see this one as a new sportier alternative to Vulcan.
Kind of also similar realm of things. Smiths, everybody knows them for the Everest. They're bringing what is basically a pole router homage of sorts. It's called the Transglobal. I think the reference is PRS 54. 38
Yes.
millimeters. It's anti-magnetic. It's got a Miyota 9039, I think, and it comes in a bunch of colors. I think it dropped today and it sold out already, or at
I
least
wouldn't
pre-ordered.
doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it. I mean,
It's sweet.
it's a great looking package, and it's basically a modernized UG. And
Yeah,
in some ways, it could also look kind of like an old 50s Tudor as
yeah. It's
well.
got that tuxedo dial look.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And the dial colorations were great. There was a white chapter ring with a black inner dial. There was an aventurine.
I was looking at that.
Oh,
Oh, it's like
that's so
Starry
beautiful.
Night. Yeah, looks great.
There's not a lot of brands that do aventurine, especially at this type of price point. And I think it's a great watch with a great dial. There was a cream color, almost like a salmon,
Yep.
light pink color dial, and then there is like a light sky blue dial and a dark blue dial. So a lot of different variations came on beads of rice. I think I sent this to you when it dropped,
Yes.
but super cool, super cool.
Yeah, this has all those vibes that I like in those old Tudors. I've talked about at huge lengths on the pod, and yeah, from a cool brand. I mean, everybody knows Smiths has that history element to it, but also I think a lot of people like the more recent Everests and things like that. So this would be another
Yeah.
great offering, obviously because the UG pole router has gone bananas in price. This one is, if I remember, I think 365 pounds. So I can't remember what the conversion is these days, but that's still way cheaper than you're gonna get a pole router
Yeah.
for.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a modern watch.
Yes, right.
I mean, that's the thing that so many people just don't remember. It's like if you go and buy an original, it's great. There's nothing wrong with that. I highly encourage it. But you're always going to have to deal with vintage problems, right? If you buy a modern watch, you're going to get the same styling. You may not get the original history or patina or whatever it is, but you're going to get something that's at least more functional and potentially more wearable to have every single day.
For show. This is one I actually didn't send this one to you. It kind of came to me randomly. I think I found it like on my explore page, like sometime today. So
Okay.
Seiko dropped those speed timers not that long ago, right? They had like sort of that panda one. They had
Yeah.
a black one. They did one in that color scheme that they've been doing where it's like the night theme where it's all blacked out and then it has like the aqua loom on it. It is
Oh.
pretty sick. It's I believe SSC 917 if you want to check it out. But super stealth. I mean, I think it has a dark gray dial for contrast, but everything else is black. Black
Oh, I
subdials,
see it.
blacked
I
out
see it.
case, and then that bright teal loom. It looks pretty damn sexy. I think it's a limited edition. It might be one of those Seiko limited editions, the quote unquote limited edition,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, yeah.
this is pretty awesome. I
It's a
gotta say.
Prospect Speed Timer Solar Chronograph, the Black Series. So what are we gonna call this one, bro? I wanna give it a nickname.
Oh, I don't know, man. I'm gonna have to stew on this for a minute.
What about the Seiko Solar Dark?
It's Solar Dark. I'll
I
have to
mean, it's
think
kind of
about it. I come up with a cute nickname for it, but it's really cool looking. I really like it. I
the
think this one's
Prospect
gonna be
Series Night
popular.
Speed Timer. Yeah, the Solar Dark sounds cooler. I think the Night Speed Timer.
But yeah, this one I kind of snuck it in on you, but I had to just throw it in
It's
just
good
because.
looking. It is good looking for
Yeah, and I
sure.
think a lot of people are into the new Seiko chronographs. I know I saw they have three more coming out. Another one that's Pepsi, a Coke,
Okay,
and I think another Panda variant. Might be a silver Panda. I can't remember, but they got three more. I think their Quartz Chronos coming out. All look pretty
gotcha.
neat. I don't know when they drop, but I definitely want to check those out too. So keep an eye out for those.
Makes sense. Makes sense. You ever think that they're gonna do a Pogue reissue?
I think this will be the format. If they do it, it'll be this format: three registers, probably maybe a Quartz Chrono. I know obviously the original ones are not Quartz, but
Yeah, for
I
sure.
just think this is the mode they're in right now, where they're strictly paying homage. They're not trying to make recreations or one for ones. Like I know they redid the Panda not that long ago. It's in a very different format. I think this might be the Pogue format or that whole generation where you had the Pogue, the Sievert, the Silver Pogue, all those
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
crazy chronographs. I think this might be like the second wave of that
Gotcha.
coming through here. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So uh usually we save the best for last, but in this case, I'm going to use this one as a big transition here. I'm sure since the drop of our episode, everybody has been waiting for this one. Obviously, last week we got into the Omega Chrono Chime and all its glory and everything that's going on with that. This week, we got innovation from Rolex of sorts.
Yeah.
So, in case you haven't been on the internet in the past week, Rolex dropped a deep sea challenge watch. It is $26,000. It is.
26
It's
grand.
titanium, which is a first for Rolex.
The
Everybody
first
is
all titanium,
right.
because they
Yes,
have
all
used
titanium.
titanium on
Correct.
some of their deep sea divers before, but
Correct.
only the
So
case back.
first all titanium Rolex. Everybody kind of thought it was going to be the Yachtmaster, right? That was the rumor.
Just
Everybody said
it's yeah,
titanium
exactly.
Yachtmaster.
Oh, was it Ben Isles watch or Ben Isley's watch or something like that? Famous sailor. He's got the Yachtmaster in titanium, and he's doing field testing for Rolex. It must be coming out soon. No, it's not. It's not. They did the same thing to you when we thought we were going to get a Tudor Submariner like 6 years ago, and they
That
gave
was
us the
so
PO1.
fun.
They
That
gave us the
was.
PO1.
But just like that, this was amazing meme fuel. I got to say thank you to them for that, as well as the PO1, as well as many other times they've helped me out there. But so if you haven't seen it, it's titanium. It's rated to 11,000 meters,
Yep.
which is rather deep. And as you would expect, to go that deep, you need a honkin' watch, and that is exactly what they delivered.
Yep.
This thing is
Absolutely.
50 millimeters, 23 millimeters thick.
23 millimeters thick.
Okay. Now, I think the crystal, if I read correctly, was 9.5 millimeters thickness for a crystal.
It's insane.
And obviously, it's super domed, and it's got a bunch of cool technology. Obviously, they're innovators of the helium escape valve, the titanium rings and casebacks that make it able to go that far down and everything. But this is a honker of a watch, and obviously you have the fanboys that are all over it, and they're saying innovation. This is amazing. This is the best thing since sliced bread. And then you have everybody else who's just like, who's buying this hockey puck? And I'm not saying hockey puck in an adoring way like I do with like a Seiko tuna. That's a hockey puck.
Yeah.
This is not the same.
This is quite literally unwearable. It's unwearable. It's 50 millimeters, which means there's only a very small portion of the human population that can ever think of pulling this watch off. Every single photo that I've ever seen of it on somebody's wrist, it makes them look like a child wearing daddy's watch. And you have to ask yourself why. Why did this watch come out, bro?
Because James Cameron, that's why.
Yeah, this is the watch apparently supposed to celebrate the James Cameron dive that was, in 2012, which I guess technically it would be an anniversary year of 2022, right? But why? Why now? Part of me can only think that this has something to do with what Omega released earlier, and that's the UltraDeep. And what's interesting about this watch is it is a commercial watch. So it's rated to 11,000 meters. Rolex has additionally fail-safe tested this to 25% past that stated depth. So they're hitting basically around 13,000 meters according to the website.
Which is the bottom of the ocean, by the
which,
way.
Which
I
is like
looked it
40,
up.
It's 45,000 feet. Okay. It's quite literally impossible to go that deep. You're literally going to bottom out.
Yes.
Right.
You can't go any deeper than that.
You can't go any deeper than that. But what's interesting about this is a commercial watch, which means they have now beat Omega in delivering a watch that's commercially available. But there's the big misstep. Rolex went so far in to make this watch basically ultra reliable, ultra different, all these things to make it beat the UltraDeep. But in doing so, they created a watch that's quite literally unwearable.
I mean,
and what's still funny about this is the actual UltraDeep watches that did the deep sea diving that Omega developed in 2019. They were tested to 15,000 meters. So even still, the actual UltraDeeps themselves are still more water resistant than this watch is now. Now, granted, it is a commercially available watch. The other UltraDeeps were not. They were prototype watches that would eventually have led to the creation of the civilian version at 6,000 meters.
Right.
But at least those UltraDeeps, I can wear one.
Right. They come in at
There's literally no
45.
way that I could wear this watch.
Yeah, they come at 45 and a half millimeters, 18 thick, and about half the weight at 123 grams. Whereas the Rolex, despite being fancy RLX titanium, is still 251 grams.
251 grams. That's insane. That's insane. That's like a solid gold piece.
Yeah, and now I'm not 100% positive if that's the. I didn't see if that was the Omega on bracelet or Omega on NATO. The NATO is obviously going to weigh less,
Sure.
but not double less.
No, no. I mean, and to put this in perspective, I just picked up not too long ago a titanium Ploprof on full bracelet in titanium. My Ploprof weighs 171 grams.
Wow. So that's actually more than the UltraDeep.
Yeah.
Huh. That's actually impressive.
So it's heavier than the UltraDeep. But this RLX titanium, which is basically just Rolex's rebranding of grade 5 titanium, which is what Omega's used for the UltraDeep and the Ploprof and a lot of other watches that they developed. It's considerably heavier by a lot. So not only is it thick, not only is it big, it's expensive, and it's not frankly wearable.
It's more than double the price of the Omega UltraDeep, by the way.
Yeah, at $26,000.
And that reference for you that like to do reference numbers, 126067 for the Rolex Deep Sea Challenge watch.
Mm.
I don't know what to do with this thing, man. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I'm not really into this whole realm of watches as it is. I'm not really. I like specs in basic numbers. Like I like to have a dive watch that's capable of being a dive watch if I need it to be. I'm big on I don't need all
Yeah,
this extra bells and
yeah.
whistles. This is not something I gravitate to normally. But I mean, good God, like the Invicta jokes are real.
I mean, who is this watch for? Like the only people that I can actually see wearing this watch are like Sylvester Stallone, Schwarzenegger, like some of those guys.
Yeah, The Rock.
Be- yeah, the Rock. I mean, like seriously, that's it. And those are also, quite frankly, the people who can afford that at $26,000.
Yeah, and obviously, even with the humor aside, it'll still be probably near impossible to get your hands on.
Oh, 100%. That's the other thing too. What do you? I just don't get it. I don't know how the internet has not clowned this watch into oblivion.
People have done a pretty good job. It's just very split. You're gonna have the diehards, and then you're gonna have everybody else. I haven't
And
seen
that's
anybody who I consider like somebody with a good sense of humor, who's kind of objective, be like, you know what, this is a home run for the crown.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I just feel like this is a forced play.
Well, here's my interesting wrinkle here is that obviously watches like these take years to develop. What's the coincidence that these both came out in the same year?
I think you know the answer to that.
I'm just, you know,
Because this is the reality. Ultra Deep with Omega broke the world record for the deepest dive to the bottom of the Marianas Trench at the Challenger Deep in 2019. It was recorded a maximum depth of 10,935 meters. Okay. Victor Vescovo, who's now an ambassador of Omega, is the one that did this. Amazing person, really nice guy, humanitarian diver, everything, right? He's the one that did this. And the new Ultra Deeps that are commercially available came out, what, 3 years later? So 2019, 2020, 21, and then 2022. It's 3 years of product development, taking what they learned from the deep sea version, the one that actually went down and dove the bottom of the Mariana Trench, industrialized it, and created a collection of watches that would be part of the Planet Ocean line. So that's 3 years. Okay. Now, I mean, it could be just basically coincidence that, hey, Omega did this in 2019. Rolex is like, all right, now we need to do this. And it would take in 3 years maybe. But I honestly think that this is because, hey, not only did we break the world record, we made the watches. Now Rolex has to say, you know what? I have to be the deepest diving watch. Let me up the ante and make a commercial version that is going to be twice the water resistance, blah, 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 blah. But in doing so, you overplay your hand by making a watch. It's not wearable.
Yeah, I'm just trying to plot out a timeline here. Like, obviously, this challenge watch, they couldn't have just thrown it together in a few months. It needed a little time. So what I'm thinking is they have the Cameron dive, right? Omega does the 2019 dive. They say we can use the 10th anniversary of the Cameron dive as an excuse to go over their head. Coincidentally, Omega also made a commercially available watch based off of their 2019 dive. So that's why you're seeing them come out in the same calendar year. Somewhat coincidentally, I don't think they both plan to be out this year because head-to-head competition, like, so close together, is what I'm saying.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. But what's so interesting about it, and that anniversary thing would make sense because it is technically a 10-year anniversary.
Right.
But they missed the actual anniversary.
Oh, well, that's just silly.
Because the anniversary, according to the case back of the watch, where it is physically engraved, they have the original date for the deep sea challenge that happened in the 1960s. Aboard the Bathyscaphe Trieste, the Picard in the U.S. Navy went down. They did the dive, and that is January 23rd of 1960. On the case back, opposite of this, you had the date that James Cameron did his dive, and that's March 26th, 2012.
Okay.
So, according to their case back, they've missed the anniversary by several months.
Yeah.
So, again, it's like, well, now I don't know. Maybe it's just Rolex being Rolex and like, well, we don't really have to do that. We don't have to release it on the anniversary date.
Yeah.
But it just seems like if that was really the impetus, you would have launched this earlier. And in doing so, you would have also undercut Omega in the announcement of their UltraDeep watches. Because those weren't announced till what, April?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that, you know what, I think that means that I don't know if Rolex knew that those were coming out, because otherwise you would have done that.
I mean, I don't know.
Fun to think about. Chess, checkers, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, look, all it is it's funny for the industry. It's a haha funny, but it's just quite interesting. It's eyebrow raising, and I just don't know who this watch is for, but it's gonna be for somebody. Somebody's gonna buy it. Somebody's gonna wear it. Somebody's gonna post it on social media as soon as they start hitting the shelves. I wish this is the watch that you want at $26,000.
Yeah, I gotta say, I don't know if it's people who work in ADs or boutiques or whatever. Like, anybody who's gotten their hands on one has sent me a video of like a wrist jingle, side profile. They're laughing the whole way. It's very funny. And again, if this is your jam and this is you need this BDE type of watch, go ahead, go nuts. I'm not gonna hate you for it, but like, I feel like you got to be a big dude to wear this thing. I don't know.
You have to, dude. I think at this point, big dude is an understatement.
If this is your jam,
you have to be a monster.
If this is your jam, you got 26,000 to throw away these days. Go nuts. God bless you. I'm not going to pass judgment on you, but wow.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of watch.
Speaking of, can I ask you something? I saw something interesting, and I don't know if I ever found out the answer to this. Is the Omega UltraDeep a jumping hour movement?
Yes.
That is neat.
So is the Ploprof that I'm wearing.
That is neat. I didn't know that. I saw that just passing over it, and I was like, eh.
Yeah, a lot of the Omega movements that are modern in-house movements are all jumping hour.
Very neat.
So like the Aquaterra, the Planet Ocean, Globe Master, Speedmaster Racings, Planet Ocean Chrono Diver, like all of those are jumping hours.
Very handy for today if you were awake at 2 a.m. to set your clock back.
Yeah, daylight savings time, flipping it back, or I guess it would have been yesterday morning for today, right? Basically this morning.
You got 1 minute left of this morning, and in 1 minute you'll have to say yesterday morning.
Are you sure? I
It's
thought it already
it
changed.
was it's the
It already
6th, but
changed, bro.
yes, it's the 6th, but it's at 2 a.m.
I think it already changed yesterday, didn't it?
Overnight it changes.
Yeah, but it changed this morning.
Yes, at
Like,
2 a.m.
yeah, not
No, that's what I'm saying. You would have been
okay,
had it
okay.
if you were up at 2 a.m. this morning. You could have used
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I
We're on
was
the
like,
same page. We're saying
I
the
was
same
like,
thing.
bro, I was like, I know it's about to change time for where you're at, but it's
We're
like it
saying the
already
same thing.
happened this morning.
Yes.
Okay. I know this because I was up late last night feeding the baby, and I was like, oh God,
Yeah, I was hyped. I
I
was
have
gonna get
more
an
time.
extra hour, extra hour of sleep, and I still woke up groggy, and I was like, "Son of
Oh
a
man, it
bitch."
was so bad. I got zero sleep last night, but
Yeah,
it is
we
what it
we
is.
had a we had a we put on. I didn't attend a wedding. We put on a wedding, so obviously it was running a little late. Good crowd, fun time, but it's draining. So I was
Yeah, for sure.
dragging ass a little bit today, just trying to keep up with everything going in my days off, football, all that good stuff. So, but yeah, that's pretty cool. Jumping hour movement I saw, and obviously those are meta certified and all that other good stuff. So,
Yeah, you can stick a magnet to it. It's gonna be fine.
if you really need a 6,000 meter watch,
I mean, I would get one.
I mean, if you're gonna go that big, you might as well try both of them on and see how ridiculous it gets.
But for now, I think I'm satiated with my deep sea
Yeah, I
diver.
think
I
I
think
think
I'm
you're
all right.
covered. I think you're more than covered. Now, the reason I put that one in the middle because there's two other drops that came out this week that are super pertinent to last week's episode. We were talking about based off a question. Somebody said that Baltic made this micro rotor watch. They were kind of on the fence about it and sort of questioning innovation versus outkicking your coverage versus trying to do too much as a micro brand or a smaller brand, trying to get bigger and things like that, or just trying to branch out and
Do something different.
yes, broaden your horizons was what I was looking for. So these next two also came out this week. One of which the day after the day I dropped that episode,
I know.
Christopher
When
Ward, which
oh,
is the brand you brought up last week. Christopher Ward, you said this reminds me of Christopher Ward. They've gotten so much bigger. They've branched out so much since their inception, and they've done a great job. They're really putting out some great stuff these days. They bring out a chime watch after we talk about the Omega Chrono chime for an hour last week.
yeah,
I wake up and Christopher Ward, the brand we were speaking about, has a chime movement
yeah,
release.
yeah.
I
So
was
cool.
befuddled. I had to send it to you immediately. I said, "What the hell are
I
the
know.
odds?"
I was when I saw it hit my inbox, I was like, "There's no way this is real. There's no way." And you know what? Good for them. Good for them doing something cool. And again, as I mentioned, on last week's episode, this makes me happy because it's people getting excited about a watch that's unique and special and different and from a brand that really isn't known for doing this, but it's a brand that's willing to push the envelope and do something anyway. And from what I can tell in all of the photos that I've seen, they did it well. It's an in-house caliber. It's a completely different type of movement, and it's a chime watch. It's not like a minute repeater,
Right.
right? So basically, it chimes the hours as they go by throughout the day, which is super cool. It's almost like a miniaturized grandfather clock,
Yeah, like
you know?
church bells.
Yeah, exactly. Like, ding, you'll get like a nice reminder. Hey, another hour in your day has passed. Like that's kind of cool. And I don't really know of anybody that's doing a complication like that right now. Right? I mean, most of the chime watches that we're going to see are going to be minute repeaters that are going to chime the minutes and the time that is elapsed based on where it's at. Right? The chrono chime was a new complication. This chime to me is also something that's different. I don't know if it's its own complication, but it is certainly a very cool one that's in a great package. And for what I can tell, every single pre-ordered version is sold out.
Well, it's 300 pieces,
But
and
there's multiple versions.
okay, I
So
wasn't
there's
sure if that was 300 per or 300 total. I didn't see that.
that I don't know, but I mean there was a bel canto on a green strap, on a bracelet, on a tan strap. There was a blue version on a bracelet. Like all of them are gone.
Yeah.
Like they're all spoken for.
I mean, when are you going to have the opportunity to own a movement like this at like $3,400? Watches that
I
look
mean,
like this are usually a ridiculous amount of money.
yeah. It's around 3,500 on the strap. It's about just under 4,000 on the bracelet. But even still, this watch looks really impressive and very, very upscale given its price point. I would really love to review this watch. Truly.
I would
This
love
is
to
a
just see
very
one.
this
Obviously,
is a very cool watch.
in such limited quantities, I don't know if you're going to be able to see one. Apparently, they had one at Windup. I didn't see it. I didn't see it
That's
when I walked
insane.
by.
That's insane.
But I mean, good on them.
Yeah,
Good
I
on them.
mean, you have to put respect where respect is due. I mean, this is super, super, super cool. And from a brand that's quite frankly, this is not expected.
No,
You know what
not
I
at
mean?
all.
They're
Again,
over here making
somewhat
C60 divers, and
right.
here we are. We got a Belcanto. You know, it's like,
This is still considered a micro brand to many.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Like so cool to me. So cool to me. They've been doing stuff that has made them do well for a long time, and they're branching out and doing something that's different and unique. And I have a lot of respect for it.
Yeah, and from what I read, I think they chose the exact alloy and case shapes and stuff to amplify the chime specifically. I feel like most brands probably do that, but again, at this
Yeah,
price point, that's a little
yeah.
above and beyond what you're expecting.
And it's still, again, it's an in-house movement.
Right, it is.
You know, like that in and of itself is an amazing feat. So when I look at this, as funny as it is, I get a lot of MB&F vibes.
Yeah, of course.
You know, this really does remind me of a legacy machine.
It's very high horology looking.
Yeah, it's super cool. Very cool watch. So Christopher Ward, if you are listening out there, good on you guys. This is truly amazing.
And then in talking about micro rotors, another micro-ish brand, and I'm gonna kind of split this hair later, but another micro brand, Yema, who is also a windup, they now have a micro rotor watch. It is
Also an
their
in-house movement.
yes, also an in-house movement. It's their Wristmaster, which is always a name that I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah, it is. It
Wristmaster
is funny.
Traveler, I believe, micro rotor is what it's
Yeah,
called,
yeah.
and it's a neat looking watch.
It is a neat looking
a
watch. I love the movement
little
design. I really do.
Genta, right? But it's cool looking. It's steel. It's sporty, and now it's got a micro rotor.
Yeah, and again, it's a super super thin watch. I think the specs are like it's just over 19 or 9 millimeters, not 19, 9 millimeters thick. So according to the website, if I'm looking at this correctly, 9.20 millimeters thick.
Not bad at all.
It's super svelte, very thin on the wrist. It's very much of like you said, a 1970s Genta, 1980s Genta, that Nautilus, that Piaget Polo, like that integrated
Yep.
bracelet, Steel Sports. Like it looks great. I think it looks great. And what's nice about it is it's reminiscent of those watches, but it isn't overtly derivative of them. You know, it has its own case shape, its own bracelet architecture, its own bezel. You know, dial's cool. The name is a little bit odd for me. The Wristmaster
Yeah, the
sounds a little
Wristmaster sounds
strange.
like a something a phase a teenage boy goes through.
Exactly, exactly my thinking as well. But what I really like is there's three different dial colors. There's a green, there's a blue, and there's a black. And what's funny about this is the movement color matches the dial.
Oh, that's neat.
So there's a green movement, a blue movement, and a black movement, all with the micro rotor. And I think my favorite is probably the green
Yeah, the
because
green looks really good.
I've never seen a green movement before, and I think it's very sick. Now the only stipulation here with this Yama is it's a crowdfunded watch.
Yes, it's on
So
Kickstarter.
yeah, it's on Kickstarter. As of right now, this recording, which will drop tomorrow, on Monday, there's basically right now 8 days left to back the campaign to see if this watch comes to full fruition. I think it should. Um, I think it's a good looking watch, especially from Yama. They're doing their own in-house movement stuff. This is cool. It's a first for the brand. I believe there's 1948 pieces of each color reference, according to what I'm looking at here on the website. And that's going to be engraved actually on the micro rotor. But really cool looking watch. I think it's different. And especially doing a micro rotor complication, we don't see too many of them. It was so funny that we were talking about that last week And then here you are, literally 7 days later, and there's one that's going for sale. So very interesting.
What would you call this bezel styling with these cutouts in it? Is there a fancy name for this?
Not that I know of.
I don't know how to describe it. There's like a little cutout that runs from about 12:30 to 1:30, and then it repeats
Yeah.
6 times evenly spaced around. So all the way back around to probably 10:30 to 11:30 is the last
Yeah,
cutout.
it's almost like it's notched. Like
Yeah, I
something
guess
should
it's
screw
notched.
into it, you know? Or
Yeah. I mean,
scalloped,
it's
maybe?
neat. Yeah, that's what I was thinking was scalloped, but I really I don't know if I don't know if there was a fun like Franco Swiss term for it or something.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I don't.
Cloisonne.
No, no, no. I don't think on this one. But
Okay.
because like even the dial has like this striping to it, but it's almost like a profile of like the Earth or something like that. Like it's
Yeah.
got like a three-dimensional
It's a little
striping to
Nautilus
it.
to me.
It is, but it has like a curvature to it.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it's straight across. It looks like it goes from the 2 o'clock position, kind of slopes downward to the center where the hands are, and then back up again on the other side of the dial. It's not just straight across.
Yeah.
So I can see it. Like I said, there's definitely some homage elements there. But what I like about it is technically its own design. Like it looks very different than anything else that I've seen from any of those brands that are so popular with doing the integrated steel sports. I mean,
Yeah.
and now as we know too, I mean, there'll never be there'll never be another steel sports Nautilus anymore. So
Now, in the midst of all of this, between last week's episode, these new drops, crackhead Rolex, but more focusing on the newer stuff, it kind of struck me. When does a micro brand lose the micro tag?
yeah,
Because I'm having trouble putting my finger on it. I don't really know. I don't obviously, like I said, Christopher Ward started very micro. Now look what they're doing. They have a chime watch. They have all these different divers and watches of all different kinds. I don't know if I consider them a micro really more anymore. You know, I don't know where to place it. You have the kind of the newer wave of micros. We talked about Baltic. We talked about some of these other ones. I feel like those are now the micros, and now you have like the Christopher Wards are now. Is that just a legitimate brand now?
ooh, that's hard. And when you were first asking that question, in my mind, I was thinking, no, I still consider them a micro brand. But the way that you just put it now, yes, that might change. But for me, this has always been my determination. I think it's the brand's ability to one be a household name, not just for Wiz community, but for the average person
Okay.
on the street, right? Like there's notoriety there. Like there's a lot of people who, if you ask them what a luxury watch is, they're going to say Tag Heuer, right? Like that's a brand that's just people know. Now it's not a micro brand,
No.
but I think you lose your micro brand status when one you become so notoriable, or that you have such a high notoriety that people that are outside of the watch community know you. I think that's one. The second determination for me is the availability of your products. Where can you get them? Can I go to a jewelry store and buy a Christopher Ward? I can't, because they only sell direct to consumer online. That's always been their business model.
Right.
And that's how they've been allowing themselves to create lower and more price accessible pieces, because there isn't any brick and mortar stores that they have to upcharge those pieces for. So I think in that determination, for me, I still consider them a micro brand. They're just a micro brand that's truly trying to innovate, right? Now, somebody like a Nomos, to me, they're no longer a micro brand. They're an independent brand, right? Like they do their own thing, but they have points of distribution. They're able to be purchased in stores. It's a name that's becoming more readily available, especially outside of the community. For me, that's a full fledged brand at this point. It's just a lower price point luxury watch. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I was trying to think about it in terms of like operation size, uh, how they go about the structure of their company and things like that. And obviously those things are very hard for us to gauge because we don't know what's going on behind the scenes a lot of these places.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
some of them, there's a single person or two people behind it, right? So that's still a pretty fledgling operation in a lot of respects.
Yeah,
That
you
doesn't
look
mean
at
they're
like
doing bad. It just means
no,
that
no,
they're
it's
not
small.
right. It's just a smaller operation.
I mean, look at Laurier, right? Like it's literally a husband and wife team doing everything from the marketing, the social media, the product designing, like everything.
Right. I think of
Right? Like,
John at Brew, right? Like
yeah, exactly.
they're doing their thing. They got their stuff out there. It's just a smaller in numbers operation. That's all.
Yeah.
But I still consider the other micros right in there with that. I don't consider them any lesser. I just consider just kind of different styles.
Yeah, and I think it's such an interesting question to ask that because when you do compare them to somebody like a Brew or a Laurier or a Baltic, where it's a much smaller operation, is there a point where the brand no longer becomes a micro brand, right? They're and 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 I guess by even my own determination of what I consider a micro brand, yes, technically Christopher Ward would still stay in that, right? Because they don't have massive points of distribution. They're not really a household name, but they're getting to the point where they truly are innovating into something that is their own. And I think part of the stipulation too with micro brands is so many of what these brands have done is piece watches together.
That's where I was going to go with this. I was about to say somebody like a Christopher Ward going to in-house stuff is not ordering Seiko NH movements anymore.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. They're not ordering
Solita SW200s
right. And
or
then
ETAs or whatever. Yeah.
And then having it assembled based on an order sheet, which
yeah.
is just another style of business model.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're onto something there.
And I think that's maybe where we start to draw the line of determination between who's a micro and who's not. Maybe it just comes down to innovation for movements, because even like somebody like Nomos, at one point in time, they were basically before the term micro brand existed, because they've been around for I think a few decades at this point. But before the term micro brand existed in the space as vernacular for the watch community, they were sourcing movements and things like that from different suppliers and different brands, and they were making them their own. Now they followed their own kind of design aesthetic with Bauhaus design and riffing on whimsical color play and all of these different things that make them unique and special to who they are, their own brand DNA and identity. But now you start to see them developing complications. Like they have swing system technologies for their movements. They have their own unique complication that they're developing. They have their own movements that they're making. So for me, can you consider them a micro brand in that sense? I think at that point, you start to have to consider them as, they're their own lower tier luxury brand, or an entry level luxury brand.
Well, that's another kind of line of distinction I always think about, is because the term micro brand is kind of a broad brushstroke there. How do you draw the difference between a micro and an independent then?
Yeah. Well, I think also it has to do with cost.
Yeah.
Like I look at somebody like Habring.
Yeah.
Right? Like they are an independent watch company. Now, technically, they're sourcing some movements from different suppliers and they're heavily modifying them for their own respects and things like that. But their price point is putting them at a place that could be a little bit more inaccessible for most people.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that certainly has something to do with it, but I don't know. I mean, this is such an interesting thing because a brand like Habring is still technically a micro in the scale of its production.
Yes.
They're only going to produce so many watches a year because they have quite literally the limitations of their production capabilities to be that much. But I don't know. It's tricky. It really is tricky.
It is tricky.
And I don't know if anybody sat down and really tried to classify this, because You know, independents can be full spectrum in terms of price point. You know, somebody like a Habring is on the lower end of the independent spectrum, but then you have somebody like a Roger Smith, and the guy produces maybe what 10 to 20 watches a year,
Yeah.
and each one has been sold out for 5 or 6 years, and they're $250,000. That guy's still an independent. He's micro in his operation. It's interesting, but in his to his credit, he's making every single component of every single watch by hand.
Yep.
So I mean, that's the crazy part. I think if I had to slap a label on it, for me, it would be mass availability of their products. It would have to be the notoriety of the brand and who they are. But I think also it's going to have to do with sourcing and supplying different external components to create your watches. I think that that's ultimately the biggest factor that really delineates a micro brand operation from somebody like a true independent. Because at some point you need that extra crutch, and crutch is not really the right word I want to use here, but for the sake of time and brevity, you need that sourcing, that crutch to provide you with those things, or else you have nothing to make. Right? If that supplier goes away, you have to find a new supplier because you're not making these things internally yourself.
Right. And you save a lot in time. You save a lot in having to do super extensive amounts of QC, where these things are necessary. It's not like it's a shortcut for the sake of laziness.
No, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. In some ways, it's much more difficult because you have to QC the crap out of them.
Yeah, when you get them.
Yeah, because you're not the one making them. You're having somebody else tool them for you, manufacture them for you, and that becomes problematic because if there's miscommunications there, there's issues with QC, like that can ultimately be translated to your product, which you're ultimately beholden for.
Well, there's like, look at Ming, right?
Exactly.
That's a brand that, again, I don't know where they lie. They're kind of in an interesting predicament there, but same kind of idea. They had a QC snafu, and there goes the neighborhood.
Yeah, that was an ugly time this past summer. That was pretty ugly. But again, I think that's kind of the big determination there is once you start truly doing stuff on your own, I think you're more of an independent brand than you are a micro brand. Because like Baltic, perfect example, everything's sourced for them.
Yes.
Movements, everything like, and that was when apparently that the micro rotor snafu that we were talking about was actually a much bigger issue than you and I had even known about
Right.
because other people brought this to our attention after we dropped the episode last week. And they were talking to us, sending us threads on the forums and all this stuff about people who have been having issues with this watch. And unfortunately, some of the situations have been less than satisfactory in terms of dealing with this, which is not so great. But they're sourcing everything. They're not making an in-house movement yet. And I think for a lot of brands, maybe this is how they step that way. I mean, that's certainly the business model that Christopher Ward followed, right? Like, let me borrow stuff and make stuff and sell it as my own and build up an infrastructure to move on into something else.
And then my last wrinkle here is something I alluded to earlier when I was talking about Yama was, so Yama is a brand that has a past,
Yeah,
but I believe they are revived.
correct.
Now, there's a multitude of these out there as we speak, right? Coming to mind, I've spoken about Aquastar,
Yep.
Allsta's out there. I know we've seen a lot of things brought back,
Yep.
right? Now,
Aquadive.
yeah,
There's so many.
so many nowadays.
Angelus.
Yes,
Angelus in the hierology space, like that was a revival brand. I mean, there's countless.
right. We were talking about Vulcan earlier.
Yep.
There's
Yep.
there's a lot at all different price points and everything. These brands have history. They have a line of credibility. Now, I don't know if that translates over because they have changed hands. So do they get the micro stamp slapped on them for the time being, or do they get a little bit of a pass?
I think for the average consumer, they mentally probably give them a pass. Because I mean, let's think of it this way: do you consider Doxa a micro brand?
No, that's the first one that pops in my mind when I think about it.
Yeah, and that's exactly the same story. What happened with them? Doxa was a company that basically went defunct in the quartz crisis. They went through different types of ownership. Everything was kind of weird. It was up in the air. They hung around, and basically the company went through a revival period because somebody purchased the intellectual property. And I think that this was somebody that wasn't too far removed from the actual business.
Yeah.
Like this is somebody that was a representative or some lead salesperson or whatever, major point of distribution for them, something like that, where they had direct relationships with the brand themselves, and they ended up taking over the ownership and buying out the intellectual property of the company and the brand, and reviving Doxa. But nobody considers Doxa a micro brand.
Yeah,
I certainly don't.
I think about the resurgence of Benris,
Yeah,
right? The Tornek Rayville
yeah,
brought that watch back. Nobody hesitated on that one.
at all. Nobody's like, oh yeah, Bill Yao. He's not really the original TR guy.
Yeah.
Like nobody cares. Like nobody cares. They're just like, this guy's doing something cool. It's got the Tornik Ravel patent name on it. It's licensed for him. He owns the rights and the intellectual property for it. He's making now Tornik Ravel watches.
It's legit.
Which is completely different because they're not Blancpain movements.
Yes.
Like it's but it's the IP, it's the name, it's the heritage of that brand. He absorbed all of it when he purchased the intellectual property rights for it.
Right.
So I think for most people, because there is some type of past, there is some type of credibility based on the pre-existence of that entity as a company, they just kind of give it a pass. I mean, I'm guilty of it myself.
Yeah.
Every day I see a Tornik Ravel post and I'm like, yeah, I'd buy that. And I can forget it's basically a Seiko movement inside of a rebranded dial. You know what I mean? It's really nothing that crazy or special. Now I know Bill Yao makes his watches with extremely crazy QC, but it's not that impressive technologically of a watch.
Yeah, very interesting.
It's a good question.
These are the things that I let keep me awake at night when I'm laying in bed, staring at the ceiling, not sleeping.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what happens to me. I'm like, who is a micro brand? Who's not? Who's no? This is.
And sometimes these things come from you guys, our listeners. Like it's amazing some of the questions and stuff that we get DM'd, and sometimes we can't respond to all of them. And I apologize. Bro typically does more of the question responses than I do, typically because he's always looking at his phone for his own account and he sees it pop up and he responds to it before I can. But we really do appreciate the questions and the things that you send in. And as you guys saw from last week, sometimes these are viable enough to turn into a full-fledged episode. So thanks guys for submitting stuff, and don't feel like you can't. We're very approachable. We want you guys to DM us and to talk to us. So if there's things that you want to see question wise or have stuff that we can maybe turn into an episode, drop us a line.
Yeah, and if you don't get an immediate response, don't take that as personal. A lot of times I'll glance at my phone at work and then I'll get the death stare from my boss. I'll be like, oh my God, this guy. And I'll just put my phone back in my pocket and forget about it. And then I'm like, oh crap, I never responded to that. But it is what it is. So, but yeah, no, it's funny how that one question sparked last week's episode, then coincidence with this week's drops into basically this week's episode.
So weird.
So it's amazing how things like that just snowball sometimes. But yeah, but all in good fun. I mean, it's not always coming up with easy coming up with episode topics or interesting talking points, but these type of things do make it a little easier.
Absolutely.
And with that, I think we'll put a stamp on this one. You've been tuning into episode 55 of Rich Cheese Radio. We'll catch you next week on number 56. Schmitty, Be good, brother.
Thanks, buddy. Take care.